Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Founders on Fire podcast with the Tech Trailblazers. I'm Rose Ross, Chief Trailblazer and founder of the awards themselves. And I'm delighted to be here with Ramesh, who is the CEO and founder of Prosimo, our networking trailblazing winner. Hello, Ramesh. How are you?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me on the show here, Rose.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, and congratulations again on your win in the networking category last year. Very exciting times for you.
Absolutely.
So I was wondering if you could give me a little bit of your background, Ramesh, and a little bit about how you came to found the company and what it's all about, please.
Oh, absolutely. So interesting journey. I've lived in the networking world for forever. Right after school, joined a big networking company. Many of you know Juniper Network, spent about a decade there. And since I was in the Silicon Valley, the startup itch started to occur. And back in 2012, got the first startup off the ground. That was Viptela. We were a pioneer in the SD-WAN space. 5 years, almost 5 years in, we sold that to Cisco. It was a great ride up. Discovered a lot about myself, kind of capabilities, how to form teams, what moves the needle and whatnot. Spent about 1.5 years inside of Cisco, and the second startup, it started to occur again. And back in 2019, my co-founders and I, we got Prosimo off the ground. Interestingly, Prosimo means the next one in Italian, and so for many of us, this is the next startup. We also want to be the next one, and it also means coming closer. And kind of fundamental to the technology that we provide is we bring users and applications and services all really close to each other, and so it was kind of fitting from that standpoint.
Fantastic. So we should really be saying Prosimo.
Yeah, exactly. That is the right way to say that. It's Prosimo. That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. Which, it's nice to have a sort of a kind of an unusual ring to a startup that doesn't mean something that everybody goes, what does that mean? So that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what Prosimo actually does.
Absolutely. So we are in the cloud networking, cloud infrastructure space. Very simply, think of it as solving two problems. What do enterprises care about? Access to applications, and what do their apps really do? So we keep the apps in the center of the universe in the public cloud, and we build infrastructure around it. And we serve two things that are trying to access the application. One is either a user like us trying to access applications, or it's another app talking to another app. So essentially, user to app or app to app. Core of what we do is networking and security combined in the public cloud, and that's really how the company was born. Fast forward to today, 3 years in, about 70 people in the company, and we just recently raised our funding round as well, bringing our total capital raised to about 55 million. But to us, the real interesting data point is the number of customers. So we've been humbled by a sheer number of customers that have taken our technology, adopted it, deployed it, and are continuing to expand, and the sheer number of new customers that are on this platform as well. So it's been a humbling journey, to say the very least, in the last 3 years, and something tells us that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and lots of interesting things to come.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on the fundraising. I mean, that's good. That's going to
it's like air, right?
Yeah, exactly. You've got some fuel for the tank now. So tell us, I mean, everybody's been talking a little bit about the difficulties of fundraising, post the beginning of the pandemic. Obviously you did your Series A, I assume, prior to it.
Correct.
How would you say the experiences were different?
So I've actually been through across two startups, about 6 different funding rounds now. And I would say it's actually quite an interesting experience to go through every single time. And the reason for that is the best time to raise is when you don't need the money. And so when you're growing like crazy in a startup, you get inbound folks reaching out to you and saying, hey, I really want to put money in. I know you don't need it. That's when you need to raise. That's the most ideal. But myself, I've given 6 experiences on fundraising. Few have been along those lines. Few have been kind of a concerted a fundraise. Right? There's really no right or wrong way to do this, but what has worked really well, and especially I'll bring the last round into focus, is just show real tangible growth. Right, early stages in the company, when you're really trying to prove out the market, you want to show that you have enough kind of customers that you have talked to, you understand the problem, and you are losing your sleep over how this is an unsolved problem. That's really what investors are looking for early stages in the company. They're looking for the team, they're looking for conviction, they're looking for a profound understanding of the problem, right? And so I think some folks get carried away with financials and metrics and whatnot in the early stages of the company. I would advise them to just kind of focus on the core, right? Fundraising, you don't optimize your time for fundraising. You actually optimize your time for building the company, and fundraising is an event that happens at a certain period of time. And so don't get distracted, I would say, by what you need to tell the investors. Just stay focused on how you should build the company. Now, certainly, as you grow the company, get to kind of the second stage of many stages, then you start to look into kind of really good fundamentals, right? And people get enamored and kind of taken away and carried away by all things that are happening around them. I would just stay grounded at the fundamentals. What is it that's really moving the needle on your product differentiation? What's really moving the needle with the initial customers? Do you have the repeatability? And can you acquire customers at a certain pace, right? And you almost, even before you reach the investors, need to get to a conclusion where you say, capital is the only thing I need to pour gas. The rest of the problems have been kind of somewhat solved. And what I need right now is capital. And when I put capital in, this thing is going to take off, right? Get to that conviction. And when you get to that conviction, you will have all the metrics, all the leading indicators and everything to show, not just to the investors, but to yourself and your own teams that, guys, we are ready for the next stage. And that would be the most ideal time to raise, right? It's not when somebody reaches out to you inbound and whatnot, but are you ready for that stage, right? When you get to that point, raise and go. So that's what I would recommend. Myself included, I talked to a few people who have asked about fundraising and when they should raise and so forth. I find myself guilty of doing this and not following my own advice sometimes, right? You tend to compare yourself with peer groups and others and whatnot. It's just a crazy exercise to go through. Like, no two companies are different. You just know that deep down, no two companies are different. No two situations are different. So optimize for what you can and where your company is at. Don't get kind of caught up with what your peer group is doing and whatnot. So that's what has helped me. It's what drives some level of sanity inside me as well.
Yeah. Well, I like that. I've always been very much the advocate that your most important investor are your customers.
Yep, absolutely.
Because they really are invested in the ground. It has to work then.
Exactly. And no better barometer or metric you can use than, are you able to energize a customer in the first conversation we are having, right? And startups, unlike big companies, don't get a seat at the table unless you really have a compelling thing to talk about, right? And when you do get a seat at the table to talk to a potential prospect, they're not a customer yet, you will need to wow them in the first 10 minutes, right? That just goes. And wow is not just, hey, I have like found a really cool way to do this or like groundbreaking technology or whatnot. They just need to see that you are equally not at ease as them in solving that problem. Like you're like losing sleep over it, and they should feel that passion in you, right? That carries you half of the way. The other half is like, are you able to relate to their problem and move the needle? So in many ways, it's just like simple stuff, but it's very hard to practice when you actually go through the whole exercise.
No, I can fully appreciate that. It's a lot of hard work. And you mentioned team earlier, and you have co-founders as well. So how, and previous conversations I've had with other founders, it's about how important it is to have that really strong team around you, sharing the responsibilities, taking everybody's strengths and deploying those, in the process of building teams and building businesses. So your background is more on the technical side, more on the business side. Where are you coming from in this? Are you personally the one losing the sleep? You don't look very sleepy to me, but it is early over there in the valley. So you might have been up all night and you're just about to fall off a cliff in your sleep. So
Absolutely. No, I may not subscribe to the same thought process as many others, but to me, I have both a master's in science and a master's in business, and I see them as two sides of the same coin. You need to be extremely grounded in technology. I say I probably spend like 60% or maybe 70% of my time in technology, product fit, customer pain points, and so forth. And the rest of the time in kind of, does this make sense for the business and how to grow? What is the competitive landscape and all the good stuff around it, right? And so as a CEO, you just have to consciously find time in the day, multiple times in the day, to zoom out. There's never a shortage of kind of getting into the weeds and trying to solve problems. But somebody has to kind of zoom out and do what is called as the systems thinking, right? You have your product, your customer, your sales, your marketing, you have like a whole bunch of these machines that are running in parallel, customer success and so forth. And you look around the room and there's only one person who is actually taking that systems view, right? And then that's kind of the CEO. Everybody else kind of looks at their own individual function. So a core part of the job is actually bringing all these things together and making sure that they're making sane decisions, right? And those same decisions could be in the area of technology, it could be in the product, it could be in the business, in acquiring the right set of partners, and so forth. So to me, if you understand kind of the nuts and bolts of what product or service you're providing, the business aspect of it just naturally comes and supports the cause. Very rarely have I seen somebody create a business plan and then the technology comes along. It's usually the other way in a startup. And that's what has worked well. Now, to the original point you made around the team, I'm a firm believer in knowing what you know and also knowing what you don't know. First thing is actually getting your co-founders to kind of complement. You put a pie together and you say, okay, I take a small slice of this pie, but the rest of the team put together, are they going to complete the pie, right? And if so, then you have a solid team. In our case, it was a co-founder very deeply rooted in engineering, another co-founder very deeply rooted in architecture and CTO, and myself on the product and the business side of it, right? So we complemented each other well, and that worked out really well. And till today, 3+ years in, we operate in exactly the same way. We have a management team that's come on board as well, carrying multiple functions. And that really helps. The other piece that really helps me is, again, firm believer in A people bring A+ people and B people bring C people. It's really that simple. And so I consider myself and my team as A people. And if we bring A+, then those guys are going to bring another set of A+ people. And that's how the teams are formed. Once you start to see cracks in the system and you bring folks who are B and B, not in a derogatory or an inferior way, but somebody who doesn't fit the profile of who we need, then that leads to kind of more of the same, and then B becomes C, and before you know it, you have a team that's not really hitting it out of the ballpark. And so simple stuff again, but hard to practice given all the constraints that the startups impose.
Yeah. And it's interesting because everybody's been talking about skill shortages. Everybody's been talking about, the impact of remote working, hybrid working on, what's happening in tech recruitment and also with retaining your talent. So do you, having done this twice effectively, obviously with your first startup and now with Prosimo, sorry, I'm going to keep doing that.
That's nice. I like
Italian. It doesn't sound Italian to anybody else. Apologies to all the Italians who are listening. But I love it. It just sounds like everybody's thinking when they speak Italian, which is great. Who doesn't love a good song? So what are you seeing? What are the differences that you can now see between, the traditional way that you did things, where you maybe had a development team somewhere and you had a head office where everybody, could get together around the water, have the water cooler moments, People got to know each other. I mean, I was just speaking to a friend of mine who's in HR, and she said that it was somebody else. It was about the fact that there were pre-pandemic employees who knew each other, had sat down, had gone out for beers, and you kind of had the vibe of each other.
Yeah.
And then the post-pandemic new team, you might say, who've only seen one another like we are mainly, so you see a person in a screen. And they said they were finding that people who knew people previously found that they were a really important resource. So you, as a startup, you're particularly challenged with regards to that because your team was so much smaller and you've probably grown an awful lot over
Absolutely.
the pandemic period because most of your life as Rossimo has
been through the pandemic.
So what have you learned from that about how you manage teams now compared with how you did it before and how you build them?
No, one thing I miss, despite us living in this new brave reality, is kind of getting together with the team. The first year of Prosimo prior to the pandemic hitting us, I remember every single day we used to have lunch together with kind of a team of about 20, 25 people at that time, right? And we just got to know each other really, really well, right? Like our shared passions, our shared interests, things that we don't agree on and whatnot. And it just came together so nicely. And in a startup, you need that because you're spending probably 12, 16 hours with each other. And so you kind of want to like and be around people that you like as well, right? And so when the pandemic hit, it was a bit of a shock to many of us. We didn't know how to handle, to put it bluntly. But it took probably 2-3 weeks. As you should expect, the first focus was on getting back to productivity so that like people are able to do their jobs the way they're supposed to. And then slowly, then we started to focus on how do we bring folks together, right? Whether it was socially distant gatherings and whatnot, we never lost sight of that. We used to have Zoom based games actually. So each person would volunteer, get the whole team together, and we would play games on Zoom for like a couple of hours, right? On a Friday, and that brought people together. It's those small moments of happiness and laughter that actually you carry through the day, right? And so that really helped. The part that we tried to do right after some level of restrictions were lifted was really get people back into the office, but at their own pace. So we said, if you want to do like a whiteboarding because you just need to interact well with each other, just reserve a room. We had like a space that was pretty big, and we put like 2-3 whiteboards so that people had their safety, but then just come together, masked and all, and still have the discussions, right? And so that really helped quite a bit. But the point that you mentioned, Rose, is spot on, and that works well when the people know each other. And for those who don't know each other, and we've spent 2 out of our 3 years in the company in a pandemic setting, which actually, if I look back, about 50 people in the company out of the 70 odd that we have all joined us in a remote fashion, right? And so they don't have the same, they did not have the first year experience, I would say, that we had, right? And so we try to bring folks together. We try to kind of encourage discussions over Slack, lots of these fun channels that we have. And just get to know people, right? People post their interest. We have something called healthy living, and people post their interest on doing yoga and biking and mountain climbing and whatnot. So you get to know some of the things about the team. So that really helps bring it together. The last couple of years with respect to kind of recruiting talent has been interesting as well, because we've just looking at the macroeconomic conditions, we've been through like a high. And then now things are looking down, so to speak, right? Because the looming recession talks and whatnot. And in each of those phases, you can use different techniques, I would say, to attract the right talent. And during kind of peaks and whatnot, you just can't go for people who are comfortable in their career and will not be able to move because of what they're making. But you do have people who are kind of stagnant in their careers, or are itching to move. I find myself in that situation probably about 15 years ago.
Don't tell anybody. Oh, not now. That's okay. Not now.
Yeah, about 15 years
He's
ago.
not leaving. He's an nation.
No, I think I'm going to be in a startup forever, I think. People who just want to do something, want to discover themselves and so forth. So you go after those guys. Those are the ones that you can kind of pluck out of the trees, right? Fast forward to today, there's a different recruiting strategy, right? Because folks who joined in the last couple of years have seen their equity in their comfortable jobs wiped out by almost half. And so you can shake a few trees and get some good talent, right? And so different strategies for different conditions, but it's always good to be getting people to kind of complement, add more. We have a simple rule in the company, heavily metrics driven, and we say you hire somebody when you feel like you have enough that's been piled on that's important. But at the same time, you don't have the time to do it. And at that time, if it's important and it needs to be done and you don't have the time to do it, that's when you bring somebody. Don't bring somebody just because you put a plan together at the beginning of the year. I need to bring 20 people and each manager goes and finds the 20 people, right? Like, no, that's not how we do it. We look at it almost every month and we say, okay, for the stage of the company, what do we need? Who do we need? And is this person or that person going to materially move the needle? And if so, bring that in. Otherwise, just be cautious, right? You never know. Things are high one day, things are low one day, but if you have the discipline in running the business, then it doesn't matter.
So on a need to recruit basis.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are times when you want to be aggressive and there are times when you want to be conservative. Things that are working well in a startup, you want to pour gas on it because it can go from 1 to 20 fairly quickly and you need people for that. But certain things that are not working, don't pour gas on it because the worst thing you can do is make an inefficient system chaotic. And the last thing you have in a startup is time.
Absolutely. Well, that's all good. So let's take us back to since you won your Networking Trailblazers Award, you've also had some other recognition from a few names that people might recognize. I think Gartner, I think I've heard of them. And CRN, Computer Reseller News, and GigaOM. So we're very pleased that the success you've had with us is obviously resonating with other awards.
Absolutely,
and great to see that you're investing the time and the effort, because it does take time and effort to do these things. Maybe not you always personally, but certainly your team and the focus on it. So why are awards like what you've had with the Tech Trailblazers and other great names that I've just listed? Why is that important to you? Why is that important to the company?
So in a startup, you have this notion of recognition or award by association, right? Which is you internal to the company and whatnot, we think of ourselves as big, but if you zoom out and look at the 30,000 foot view, you're like a tiny speck in a big ocean, right? And then it's just very humbling when you think about it that way. And so you want to get credibility by association, and credibility by association comes in a few forms and shapes. One, certainly you have a thesis that you have started a company around. When nobody believes in that, you have a high degree of conviction. You've formed a team together to kind of support that cause. And now you're bringing customers on board to kind of get that to the next level, right? The first endorsement comes from actual paying customers who endorse the technology and are able to use it. That is kind of the rubber stamp of approval of a startup that says you are legitimate now, right? The second comes in the form of multiple customers essentially reaching out to these analysts and whatnot and saying, hey, there's a new wave of innovations that's happening, and this one company is actually kind of leading the charge on that on that innovation, right? And so it's very humbling to see some big kind of S&P 500 names, Fortune 500 names actually call into Gartner and say, hey, I'm building this. I'm using Prosimo for these things. Are you seeing this as a regular pattern, right? And Gartner reached out to us and said, hey, looks like you guys are talking to quite a few customers and whatnot. What are you guys doing about this? Right? And so that led to a few dialogue and whatnot, right? Lo and behold, towards the end, why are these awards important is it's that rubber stamp of endorsement and credibility, right? Because not everybody gets to win. Not everybody gets to claim that they are winners in these awards as well. But when you put some concerted effort, when you have that initial conviction when nobody has, and you see that come through, then what really makes it real is essentially getting these recognitions. So I see this as a huge part of the strategy, and it's just like us in real life. When we go search for a car or search for something to buy for our home, we look for kind of third party endorsements, right? Credible endorsements. And so it's the credibility by association that really helps quite a bit, and it needs to be a conscious strategy instead of a startup. Now, at the same time, I would say be careful and cautious in engaging with the right outfits, right, and the right outlets, because there are some that are kind of low bar, I would say, than some that are like really credible. And so invest the time in the credible ones. I'm happy you mentioned Trailblazer, CRN, Gartner, and so forth. These are really credible names. And so just associate yourself with that. It takes a bit of time and energy, but it's well worth in the end.
Well, we're very happy to be bedfellows as the tech trailblazers with GigaOM, CRN, and Gartner. So yeah, no complaints there. We're very happy to be part of that tribe. So obviously you've had a load of cash. Well, you may not, it may not be directly in your bank right this second, but you have access to a big pot of cash, relatively speaking. So 30 million. What are your plans with that? I mean, obviously, clearly there are things that you outlined that you said, this was what we want and this is what we want it for. Obviously, some of it you may not want to share, but what are your priorities that you can talk about?
Really, the priorities are two, right? One is you want to continue the game on innovation, because what got you here is having that innovation and differentiation, and there's no time to pause on that, right? You just need to keep that moving, because guess what? If you're doing something, somebody is going to come and copy that or follow, and some might be fast followers. And the last thing you want is those fast followers to kind of out innovate you, right? And so you need to ruthlessly out innovate the others, because that's what has gotten you to this point, and that's what's going to get you to the next milestone as well, right? So core focus is around innovation. The second goes back to essentially pouring gas on something that has worked, right? So in the first couple of years of a startup, you do a lot of experiments. You make a bet, you kind of let that bet go through, and then you see towards the end, has it fallen flat, or were you directionally right, or has that really helped? If it's in the third category of really, really helped, then you want to pour gas on that, because you did an experiment, which means you've not gone and exhausted the people you can go attach into for that experiment. So go push on that, right? And the second one is for things that are directionally right. Is that going to get to the third category? Can you really use that as a tailwind in the company? And if so, kind of pour gas on that. This comes in the form of getting more people in the go-to-market functions. This comes in the form of having kind of repeatability and product-led growth inside of the company. So you want to invest in areas that are going to give you that force multiplier, right? And so once again, it goes back to fundamentals and basics. See what works and invest more in that, because it's going to yield the return, and watch it like a hawk, right? Because I take the funding round that we have raised as though it's my personal money and money I have inherited, and kind of it's the money of all the people around me, right? You want to safeguard that. You want to make sure that you get the returns on that investment. So be cautious about that, but at the same time, when you see something working, then just pour on the gas there and accelerate, right? And things that are not working, now is the time to kind of kill it. Don't invest too much time in things that are not going to work, because after you do one or two experiments, you have enough data points to prove one way or the other that it is working or it's not working. And if it's not working, either try to correct course, but like if you see it not showing the right promising signs, just kill it, right? Like people get very emotionally attached to this is my project and whatnot. No such thing in a startup. They just correct course. There are plenty of things to do. Pick something else and go run. That's all.
Don't grab that. And your partners, your VC partners, who are you working with, and why are they a really good fit for what you guys are doing at the moment?
Yeah, so this is what I would say we consciously did because this is the second time for us. And so I'm humbled and honored to be working with the investors. One part of their role certainly is to provide the capital, but to me the most important one is the guidance, right? Every month I have one-on-ones with our investors, and I ask for some part of that one-on-one to be just a informal session of sorts, right? Like I want the ability to throw ideas and just get a sounding board going, right? Like, hey, this is directionally right, or this is what I think about it, and so forth, without having to worry too much about what the hell is this guy thinking, right? Like I don't want that judgment to come in the way of me testing out ideas on the people, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it is like, hey, to stay true to kind of the core values of the company and the fundamentals of the business, right? Show that things are growing. And so as you're able to kind of straddle between those two, then absolutely great. I personally, this time, second time around, wanted investors who are practitioners and who have been knee deep in running companies. And so all the investors we have so far have all been in companies, big or small, running teams, have grown businesses from the ground up and have shown success, right? Because they have a profound sense of appreciation for what it takes to build something. You can't be looking at kind of leading, lagging metrics, financial metrics, or customer acquisition metrics and run a business. You just need to be grounded in what does it take to build a team? What does it take to acquire a customer? Like, because I need to be able to tell somebody, this is why the deal that I promised for, I don't know, July has moved to August. It's just part of the thing, and there should be no questions around it, provided it's all for the right reasons, right? And so those are the things that you look for in an investor. And and the second part to that is the quality connections. If you get people who have been practitioners, operators, are well known in the industry that they have lived in, they have contacts that humble you. I've actually been floored by my request to a few of the investors on, hey, do you know this person? And they're like, yeah, he's my friend. And like 2 minutes later, there's a text message that connects the two of us. I was like, wow, this is nice. So that's kind of the quality of the investors that you want to be looking for.
Fabulous. Okay, so is there anything else? Because we've covered so much ground, your startup journey, your investment journey, your technology journey, your building teams, working through the pandemic, recruiting, maintaining, all of this stuff. Is there anything else you'd like? And of course, how amazing awards like the Tech Trailblazers are for you. Very, very important.
Absolutely.
We have our awards night on the 15th of November. We're hoping to see Prosimo also raise a cup again, perhaps then, just a hint.
Would love to.
We've obviously covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you think would either be, of interest to our listeners?
Since this is the startup podcast, one thing I've grappled with in the past, and I wouldn't say continue to, but something that you have to consciously work on is essentially looking inward and kind of staying true to your own growth, right? I think the first order metric is not how you are doing with respect to all the other companies around you. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. And I'll use kind of LinkedIn as an example. Nobody goes to LinkedIn when you're sad and posts that, hey, I'm having a really bad day. Like nobody does.
But that's for Facebook.
Exactly. Like, you always go to LinkedIn and you want to post something that's great, right? And so you have to understand that whatever is on LinkedIn is probably the people writing with that frame of mind. That very same person is going through enough of a turmoil, right? And so when you are on a low, for example, don't go to these places. Like just look inward, look at kind of what you can control, and essentially kind of build towards that, right? What has personally helped me, and I mentioned this to all the people in the company as well, and all the employees and folks we have, is just compare yourself from 3 months ago. It's a very simple comparison to do, right? And nobody needs to be a judge of that. Only you are a judge of that, right? Have you personally become better as a person, as an employee, as a contributor, as whatever it is, right? From 3 months ago. And if you have not, then there's no other comparison you need to do. You just need to work on how to do that, right? And then just move the ball forward, right? So that's one I would definitely encourage. The second one is just for startups. I would say probably 10-15% of the time is when you are on a high. The other times you are on a low, and the lows are lows, really bad lows, right? But when you put all this together, the trend line is up and to the right. And so don't get enamored by living in chaos, living in distress for prolonged periods of time, because you just know, be an eternal optimist, right? Just be an eternal optimist, because the high is going to be a real high. So look forward to that high, and nothing can deter you from reaching that, right? And so those are two things that have personally helped me. I'm sure I can learn a lot from others. I do listen to the startup podcast, and during my runs, I do listen to that, and a small nugget of information comes out of the left field from somewhere, and it just jolts you. It just like, wow, I never thought about it that way, right? And so just kind of know what you know, and also know what you don't know, and be on the lookout for that. That's all I can say.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Ramesh. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations again on all your recognition.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you, Rose. And questions were awesome. I hope the listeners get somewhat of an understanding of what it takes to a startup. Those that are already in a startup, you know what I'm talking about. Those that want to jump in, it's not bad at all. Just jump in. It just requires guts of steel, and everything else just takes care of it.
Yeah, and a really big smile. I have to say that you've got an amazing smile, which also goes a long way, I have to say. I'm sure that your team very much welcome that when they're having a bad day, that Ramesh is smiling at them.
No, life is too small, and you just know, once again, going back to, you just know you're going to be hitting a high very soon, right? And so don't let anything deter you from that. When you get the high, celebrate with the team. When you get the lows, pick yourself up and the team and run forward. That's it.
Yeah, simple. This too shall pass, as they say.
Exactly.
So thanks again to Ramesh, who's the co-founder and CEO of Prosimo, and was our networking trailblazer last year. So you've been listening to Rose Ross. I'm the Chief Trailblazer and founder of the Tech Trailblazers Awards, and this is the Founders on Fire podcast and video cast, where we meet the winners and the founders of the winning companies. You can find us at www.techtrailblazers.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter at TechTrailblaze, and also find us on LinkedIn. We look forward to connecting with you. Thank you very much again, Ramesh.
Best of luck. Thank you as well, Ross.
Bye now.
Thank you.